women more so than men feel the need to get married by a certain age. And part of that is because of our biological clock. That makes sense. And other reasons. I mean, there's so much stuff when it comes to beauty and your value when you're younger as opposed to being an older woman and all these things. And that plays in our minds.
Welcome to the Inspired to Thrive podcast. I'm your host, Phoebe Lay, and in each episode, I will be sharing with you insights from either an inspiring person or myself to help you thrive and shine online and in person. We talk about all things marketing, relationships, money, business, growth, mindset, and more. So thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you inspired to thrive. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Inspire to Thrive and Shine podcast. Today, I have with me a beautiful guest all the way from New York City. Jasmine Clemente is a multifaceted professional, combining her passion for creative writing, yoga, and spirituality into her work. With multiple publications in Medium, Substack, and other platforms, she writes about self-help, psychology, and lifestyle, reaching thousands of followers and readers. She is also a best-selling author of More Than One Soulmate and a popular registered advanced yoga teacher on the world's #1 meditation app, Insight Timer, offering classes both online and throughout various holistic centers. Jasmine, welcome to the Inspired to Thrive and Shine podcast.
Hello, thank you so much. Namaste.
Namaste. I'm so thrilled that we got to chat while I was away in China. We were talking about your book. And so I would love to start off by hearing about your travels, your adventures, and what inspired you to write your book, More Than One Soulmate.
Okay, this is a long one. So during 2020, I was in a relationship, and 2020 was the pandemic. So it was a historical, monumental, crazy time throughout everyone's lifetime, right? Because no one saw that coming. So I was in a relationship. I was also 39, turning 40. I'm now 43. I was in a relationship, and I had so much pressure from so many people that were rushing me, family and friends, like, oh my God, are you guys going to get married? And so I felt this pressure because of my age that I had to get married, and not so much because I'm in love and it's the best relationship and et cetera, et cetera. So long story short, the relationship didn't work out. But during 2020, while everyone was quarantined, I was traveling from New York City to California because it was a long distance relationship. So because it was long distance and it was 2020, there was so much uncertainty in the air. Should I move to California and maybe now is the time to take this leap of faith and go into a new environment? Or should I stay put in New York? But then I had so many people telling me, just get married. This might be it. And you're turning 40. And I felt that wasn't the right reason, though, to make such a huge commitment. Not because of my age and I have to rush it, but am I in love? Have we been together for a long time? And we weren't together for a long time. So it didn't work out. And then it inspired me to write this book. So the book called More Than, here it goes right here. So
Oh, such a beautiful cover. For anyone that's tuning in on YouTube or on Spotify, you can see this book is not only divine, but it comes alive and you can really connect with it. I'm so excited to read this.
Thank you. So basically, I do love relationships, and we're human beings. We're designed to procreate. We're sociable creatures, all of us. I love love, but I wrote the book because I know a lot of women go through the same thing where sometimes we end up in relationships, not necessarily because we're in love and happy, but sometimes we get stuck in them because we feel we're supposed to. I'm a woman. I'm supposed to be in a relationship. I can't date another guy again. I'm going to look bad. You don't want to get a bad reputation. You don't want your family to look at you the wrong way, et cetera, et cetera. And I feel like love is so precious, it's so valuable. And especially when you are in a committed relationship, whether you're married or not, it's a responsibility being with another person and saying those words, I love you. There's value and there's weight in that. And it's not something you should just fly off the handle and casually say because it's expected that this is what we should be doing. And then you irresponsibly get into a relationship that maybe it's good for you, maybe it's not. I mean, we could talk about abuse. Women that stay in abusive relationships because of that. So it's a deep book. There's a lot to talk about, but just to wrap it up, I ended up going to Tulum, Mexico. And I did this writer's retreat for myself, a solo writer's retreat. And I went to Tulum, Mexico, and I wrote about not only that relationship, but other relationships. So I kind of went back into time and was writing about different relationships that I've been in and why they didn't work out, but the lessons that I learned from each relationship, and that every relationship you learn something from. They're all beautiful because we're human beings. There's always beauty in every relationship. And sometimes the one you want doesn't want you. And sometimes the one that you don't want wants you, right? Sometimes you're the one breaking someone's heart, and sometimes someone else is the one breaking your heart, right? That's why it's called More Than One Soulmate, because it's not a straight and narrow road. It really is a winding road with hills and valleys, and that's life.
Yeah, I love that. I've had this discussion with many people before, and I'd love to know what your thoughts are on the fact that even though that we have more than one soulmate, not everyone is obviously right for us, but the connection with certain people sometimes can be lifelong. I know I've left impressions on certain people that will feel I am their soulmate for the rest of eternity, even though it didn't work out. But
Right.
I also know that it's not always mutual. Someone could feel you are their soulmate, but you don't always feel that way for others. So I wonder, is this soulmate thing just an emotional connection, or the fact that some people are really good at having really deep connections and conversations, or creating a sense of that mutual understanding? Or is it maybe people being connected in past lives and things like that? What's your definition, first of all, of a soulmate? And then what are your thoughts on that?
I love everything you're saying, especially when you went back about the past life. I definitely believe in that. When we talk about the soul, I believe that each person has a purpose in life, or you can call it a mission, a purpose, a calling, et cetera, et cetera. And I do believe in reincarnation, by the way, as well. I understand not everyone does. So that's why I do believe that sometimes soulmates can be people that we've known in a past life, for sure. And sometimes they're brand new and we didn't know them from a past life. They're a new person coming in. But back to us having a purpose, our soul purpose, I believe that within that soul purpose, there are certain people that maybe we're spiritually contracted to cross paths with in this life because they're helping our soul along the way to fulfill whatever that purpose is, and vice versa. So I don't think it's always, oh, you're my soulmate, so you're supposed to be my life partner. We're going to get married and be together forever. You might be, you might not be. That depends on the purpose of my soul and what I came here to do. So, for example, let's say choices that we make lead us to certain destinations. And depending on what our purpose is, let's say I'm meant to be in media, which is what I'm doing right now, or I'm meant to get my message across to certain people. Had I been with a certain person, my life may have not have gone down this direction. It would have went into a different direction. I could have had children, let's say. I could have lived in a different city, let's say. I never would have met certain people, and maybe this book wouldn't have been published, right? So it doesn't mean that life is a book already written. I do believe in free will and free choices and stuff, but I do believe that certain people come into your life, a soulmate, and they come because they're there to assist your soul, not only towards your destiny and your purpose, but for your expansion.
I absolutely agree. And I feel I have been through this more than once. And each time that soul contract, I call it, ends, or I believe that we all fulfill a soul contract with one another. And that's why sometimes people feel very, very significant, and people get very heartbroken when those relationships end or it leaves a lasting impression. But I do believe that we all have a soul contract to the people that are close to us to enable the other person to grow and to learn and expand and evolve for that next lifetime. And having come back from China, there's a lot of talk about reincarnation as well. And there's a lot of belief that people live many lifetimes and reincarnate into animals and stuff like that, and then back into humans. Or, yeah, we could talk about this all day, but and then each of people have different beliefs, right? But I do think that if we can respect the fact that a person has come into our lives for us to evolve, and we don't necessarily spend a whole lifetime with that person, then that letting go process is a lot less painful. It can still be quite painful, but it is a lot easier, and it means that you don't hold on to every connection. You're desperately clinging onto it, right?
I love that. I love that. If you know, because sometimes we don't know until we go through the experience, but we might think in the beginning, this is it, this is the one. But if we know that they're meant to serve their purpose and then let go, then it does make it easier. It depends on the level of consciousness where we're at in our journey, right? So you believe in reincarnation, that not everyone does. If someone believes that this is your one and only life, they may believe this is it, this is our one chance to get it right. But you may believe, I'll see you in the next lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah. I believe in that. I personally believe in infinity, that our energy is infinite and that we can meet in different lifetimes and maybe even in different
Yeah.
universes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is part of the reason why I became a yoga teacher, just to throw that in there. I'm very spiritual. And like you said, reincarnation is big in China. And when you become a yoga teacher, because I'm a yoga teacher, there's three central religions that you also need to learn. And it's Hinduism, Buddhism, and Taoism. And all three of those religions believe in reincarnation. So it fits in with more than one soulmate. If you're talking about the soul is infinite and you can take on many shapes and different existences, different lifetimes.
It's funny because all three of those religions are so intertwined. Especially, I mean, in China, Buddhism and Taoism is very intertwined to the point where I didn't realize there was a difference until I translated the word Taoism and I was like, oh, that's Taoism? Oh, okay. And that's when I realized there's a lot of mystical fantasy movies, things that you hear, stories and movies that you hear about and that you watch from childhood. And it's
Mhm.
not until you grow up that you put those together and you're like, oh my goodness, this is not just video games and movies. There's stuff behind that.
Yeah, I know for sure. And it's funny because in More Than One Soulmate, the relationship that inspired me to write the book was the one that I had. I was going back and forth to California. It was a long distance relationship. He was also a yoga teacher. So it was funny because we had that in common. So I'm a new yoga teacher. He's been teaching it for many years. So we were both yoga teachers and we had that in common. But there were still a lot of things that I've spoke to other people who have gone through this where they'll date someone who is spiritual or who's in the spiritual community and stuff. And we put them on this pedestal thinking that because they're a yoga teacher or they're a Reiki master or this guru, not that they have all the answers, but we put them on this high pedestal, right? Because they have this supposedly knowledge. And we forget that they're human too, right? And they still have shadows that they're working out, or they wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be alive, right? If we were perfect, I guess, right? It is interesting. I mean, you meet people, and sometimes you think because maybe they're a life coach or a yoga teacher or a priest or a rabbi or a monk, you expect that they're at this higher level. It makes sense, right? Because they do have a certain amount of knowledge, and with that integrity you would think that they hold themselves to a higher standard, but they're still human and they're still learning and they're still making mistakes and they're fumbling and they still got their own shadows to work out. It's just disappointing when we experience that because we're thinking they're not supposed to have weaknesses or make mistakes, but they do.
I think that anyone that we put on a pedestal is going to disappoint us. And unfortunately, that comes when you start a relationship and you don't do the work to balance that whole infatuation phase. And I talk about this in previous episodes where I talk about the DeMartini method, because I really believe that if we all start with that process of writing out the drawbacks of all of the pros that we see in our partner, then there's less of that infatuation and we can look at things from a very balanced point of view, and then there's less disappointment. So,
Which is another reason why every relationship is different, but why I felt not rushing into a huge commitment like marriage, for example, because there's the infatuation stage. If you're dating someone and you're in that infatuation stage, and then you're getting into a relationship and you're in that honeymoon phase, and you start talking about moving in right away or getting married, and well, because of our age, we should probably get married now, which, if let's say you were in your 20s, maybe you'd give it more time because that's what's natural. But sometimes people feel when they're in their 40s or 50s, oh, well, let's step on it because you're getting older. But the process should still be the same regardless of what age you are. You have to take time getting to know someone because they are human and they do have highs and lows and strengths and weaknesses. And it takes time to develop that foundation. In the beginning, it's great. So you have them at this high standard because you're like, oh my God, this is an amazing man or an amazing woman. I'm so happy. Does that mean that you're going to walk down the aisle with them now because they're so great, but it's just the beginning? You haven't gone through anything together yet. So I feel like women more so than men feel the need to get married by a certain age. And part of that is because of our biological clock. That makes sense. And other reasons. I mean, there's so much stuff when it comes to beauty and your value when you're younger as opposed to being an older woman and all these things. And that plays in our minds. And sometimes we end up getting into situations that we probably shouldn't be in because the foundation is not set in a healthy way. It's in an unhealthy way because we have unhealthy thoughts about being valued and being accepted in society. And then there's no room for real love to grow. You might just suck the love out of something that could be a good potential, but then you're sucking it out of it because you're not allowing it to naturally grow the way it's supposed to grow.
Oh my goodness, I totally agree. I actually had this conversation with someone just last night about how in our 20s and our 30s, we all think that, yes, we're going to get married at a certain age. We're going to tick this box. We're going to get married by 30 and have our first child by 31. And then you get to 32 and it doesn't happen, and 33 and 34. And you put this timeline. I remember the most dangerous thing that I did was I put this timeline where I have to have my first child by 36. And I just rushed into a relationship with someone that pretty much offered me everything that I thought I needed, even though at the time there was nothing about that person that aligned with where I was going. He was just very, I'll go where you go, I'll move where you move, I will help you build your dreams and your business and your future. And there was a lot of future promises that just didn't eventuate. And I remember at the time, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever. He's ready. And this could mean that all of these things get ticked off. And now I'm not 36 yet. It's approaching. And I think I could easily wait another 4 or 5 years. My parents wouldn't be very comfortable with it, but I would be because I know that my biological clock is actually healthy. I'm a very healthy young woman, and I did not have a single person guess my decade. I mean, when I'm not wearing makeup and I'm all day on the beach, I think most people guessed that I was 10 years younger than I am. And I felt that way. And I really believe that if you feel young and you live healthy, you don't have to fall for that pressure of those timelines because they are ridiculous and they're placed on us by society. And I'll just go through this really quickly because I'm going to do another podcast episode about this. But culturally, there's a lot of expectation for women to get married by a certain age. Otherwise, they end up on the shelf. And I just think that anyone that's subscribed to that needs to be around community and people that are unsubscribed to that because it ends up being a really awful trap where outcomes don't necessarily what you think they will be.
You're saying that at a certain age, it feels we're going to be put up on a shelf. And that right there is fear. So if you end up marrying someone or moving in with someone because you're like, oh my God, if I don't do it now, I have 5 years left or 3 years left. It's going to go by fast, right? Now I'm going to be put up on a shelf. Those are the wrong reasons, number one, to get into a relationship. Number two, is it so bad if you are single for a while? Because the thing is, love is all around. Now, you can be in a beautiful relationship. You want to be in a relationship with a healthy man that you are compatible with, that you feel good with. And for the men who say, oh, I'm going to put that woman up on a shelf because she's too old, you don't want to be with that kind of guy anyway, because that's superficial and that's shallow. So why even want to attract that kind of man? There are men out there in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. They might be widowed. They might just, they didn't have a good relationship. They got divorced or all different types of reasons, right? So if you end up with your best friend, you develop a friendship with an amazing guy who respects you, who treats you good, who's not shallow, who's deep and introspective and wise and all of these things. And you happen to be an older woman and he's an older man, and you just end up naturally forming a relationship. Who cares what age it is, as long as it's real and it's healthy and it's good. I don't think that every man wants a woman 10, 20 years younger than them. I think there's a lot of guys who do, but they're shallow. So who cares about them? All you need is one person you're going to end up with anyway, right? So if there's 1,000 guys who don't make the cut, who cares? Because you're only looking for one anyway, right? So all those guys that are shallow, that want the young 25-year-old or whatever, you want that one who is for you. And the one that is for you, you're going to be best friends with that person. It's going to be natural and organic. It's going to be holistic and healthy because we want that. And we're not going to have to change who we are or rush into something because we're afraid and want to impress our family or impress society or whatever. So I say love life, love your friends, love you, love your life as it is. And eventually, the right man who is compatible with you is just going to walk parallel with you. You're going to merge naturally. And who cares what age that happens at?
I totally agree. And I think we need to stop comparing our journeys to others as well.
Yes.
I know for sure in my 20s, I was seeing people starting to get married. In my early 30s, most of them are having kids. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, why is this not happening for me? And when you start to accept that our journeys are all different and you realize that we're going back to this concept of growth, right? We're on this planet, we're in this lifetime, we're in this bodysuit to grow and evolve. And say if I did get married when I was 24, rather than when I'm in my 30s or even 40, who knows, it could be when I'm 40, then maybe I wouldn't be able to do the things that I'm doing, traveling the world and building my business in Southeast Asia or Europe, for example. And I wouldn't be writing my book or doing this podcast. Like there's so many different things because the moment you get married, well, not everyone, but for a lot of people, they become a mom, a housewife, or a wife. Their duties are different. The definition of what they do becomes different. And that's not for everyone. So I think we've got to stop comparing because the moment we stop comparing, then we start to appreciate that everything is happening in the right timing. Some people call it God's timing. If you can hold on to that, this is all God's timing and just enjoy your life, then you'll start to see the fruits. It'll all make sense in the end. When you're 80 or 90 or on your deathbed, you won't look back and go, oh, I got married 10 years later than everybody else, and that sucks.
Right, right. That's so
Right?
true. The other thing too is that, like you said, we shouldn't compare our journey to other people because while there are some couples that are healthy and happy and they have an amazing relationship, there are couples that are miserable together too. And then they end up getting a divorce. And we know so many people that have gone through divorces. So imagine, for example, I'm 43. And so sometimes I'm very happy, I'm in a good space. I've had some relationships that were pretty volatile, though, that were bad. And I was like, oh, I got to get out of this fast, right? This is not good. But with that being said, if I would have stayed in those relationships or with that person because of my age, which, by the way, so I got into a relationship at a certain age because I thought I needed to get married. It wasn't the guy from California, it was someone else. And it turned out that he was volatile, very volatile. But part of the reason I stayed with him was because I thought I need to get married. I need to make this work. So no matter how many problems we had, I was like, no, we have to work it out. We have to, like, love will save the day. And it just got worse and worse. It became very toxic. So my point with that is, even though I'm 43 and I'm single, I say to myself, imagine I would have gotten married at a younger age and I was going through a divorce right now. Let's say at 41, 42, which a lot of people get divorced around that age, right? Let's
Mm.
say I'm going through a divorce. Let's say I'm a single mother, one, two kids, or maybe not, doesn't matter. But let's just say I'm going through a divorce. I hear from a lot of people, because I haven't gotten divorced, I haven't gotten married or divorced, but I hear from a lot of people who have gone through divorce. It is really, really painful and very traumatic.
Yeah.
And it takes time to heal from a divorce. So I could be that 43-year-old who's going through a divorce right now, who's going through trauma, or I can be that 43-year-old right now who's happy, who's aligned. So there's no reason to rush into marriage when we're younger because we don't know what we're getting ourselves into. There are people who have horror stories. And like I said, not all. There are people in healthy marriages and healthy relationships, of course. And that's our goal. But there are also people that are not. So why compare your life, your journey to someone else's. You don't know what people are going through. It may look good on the outside, but you don't know what's happening behind closed doors.
Oh my goodness, I totally agree. I just came back from travel and I met two ladies who are them and their husbands look like they're like magazine cover perfect couple. And in society, everyone thinks that they're the ideal family, the ideal couple. And they actually said to me, they were like, sometimes I don't even know why people get married because 20, 30, 40 years later, everyone's miserable. And that was their perspective. Everyone's miserable. Everyone in my circle, I mean, they're in my parents' age, but everyone in our circle is there's this and that happening. They're cheating on each other, or they're unhappy, or they're living in different countries. And you're like, oh my goodness. Definitely, it makes you realize that even if things are great in the honeymoon stage and at the start, people also grow apart. Not everyone
Mm,
is going down that same direction. And if you're finding someone and rushing into it really quickly, but you're going down different roads and different paths,
hmm
it just doesn't always work out that way. So I think the conclusion to this is just don't rush it. Let things happen in its own timeline and have more goals than just marriage and kids. Because I think it's important to have goals such as I want to be aligned with my partner. I want to have a partner, we're really fulfilled in our relationship and we both have our own lives and our own goals, but we also help each other fulfill each other's goals and have more realistic expectations as opposed to, oh, he's my age, he's single, my family likes him, his family likes me, he wants kids, let's do it. I think it's important to look deeper and ask yourself questions like, do I like waking up next to him in the morning? Does he support my vision? Do I support his? Do we have the same values? What are your thoughts on that?
I love that you said to go slow first. That's what you're getting out of this. And it is important because the honeymoon stage is nice. And as you get to know the person more and more, there might be secrets or hidden things you didn't see in the beginning, obviously. And then it starts to come out. As you're spending more and more time together, you have to start paying attention to, am I becoming happier or am I becoming more sad? Because what happens is this, there's an analogy, I guess you would say, of the frog in the water. There's this boiling pot of water. At first, it's not boiling because the stove is off. So you put the frog in the water, and the frog's like, oh, I'm in my environment. I'm in water. I feel good. Right. And then little by little, you start to put the stove on. So it warms up, and he's like, okay, the water's warm. That's fine. He's not going crazy. But then you put the stove up higher and higher, and then eventually the water starts to boil. And by the time the water's boiling, he's been so comfortable in the water for so long that he doesn't jump out of it and he dies inside the pot of boiling water. In the beginning, when you're dating someone, right? If the pot of water was boiling to begin with, he's gonna jump out. I mean, he's gonna go, "Whoa, this is hot," and he jumps out.
Yeah.
But if you put him and it's nice and cold and lukewarm, he's comfortable. And then little by little, it starts to boil, and eventually he dies. But the reason why he dies is because he was comfortable.
Yeah.
So that's why I like what you said about taking it slow, regardless if you have things in common, regardless if you have the same goals. That's good, but that's still surface. There are things that people hide that it doesn't come out until a year later, sometimes 2 years, or not until you're moving in with them. And now it's going to be harder for you to leave. When you're dating, it's like, I don't have to show everything. But when she moves in, now I can really get comfortable and show her who I really am because she's not going to leave that easily.
And that's how a lot of toxic relationships end up. Moving in can be a really fast way of getting to know someone, but it can also, under the wrong circumstances, be very dangerous because you're isolated and that person can start to manipulate you very easily.
And, even if it's not abuse per se, the thing to pay attention to is, am I happy? Because the longer you're with someone, you start to realize, am I really happy in this relationship? Because as more and more stuff comes out, whether it's abusive or not, it could just be that you're like, oh, I thought we had a lot in common, but I'm realizing we don't have as much in common as I thought we originally did. Because maybe in the beginning, you're both in the same field and you want to collaborate together on your business. And you're imagining, oh my God, we can be a power couple. I can imagine us merging our businesses together. And all that is great. And maybe around the same age, like you said, or you're families get along or whatever. But then the longer you're with that person, other things come out. Like maybe that person's a cheater. Maybe they have to have more than one woman and you didn't realize that. And now that you've merged businesses together and your families have met and you're comfortable, like the frog, now you're like, oh my God, they're cheating, you know? And it may not be necessarily abusive, but maybe they like other women and they're emotionally cheating or micro cheating. And there's different levels and it doesn't have to be extreme all the time, but you really want to pay attention to, am I getting happier or am I getting sadder? Is my glow glowing more? Am I becoming more radiant with this person? Am I getting more energized? Or am I becoming a little bit more drained and depleted?
Yeah, that's so true because I think a lot of women don't realize this consciously, but unconsciously they do. I remember when I was in my last relationship, I was slowly becoming less and less inspired by my vision. I was becoming more and more drained and fatigued. All of a sudden, he was becoming more and more of the center of focus and attention. And then all of a sudden, I'm slowly struggling to get out of bed. I'm struggling to sleep any less than 9 hours a day because I'm just drained. Those things are really clear indicators and warning signs. And if you experience that and you're like, something's not right, just look at the most immediate thing in your life, and I guarantee it's that thing. And relationships take a lot of work. They take a lot of energy, and if they're not energizing you, when that relationship ends, the glow up happens, and it's so real. The number of people that are like, you look so good right now compared to last year, or you look so radiant and alive, and that glow up tells you everything. It tells you that you're on the right path. And if you're glowing up in the relationship, that tells you you're on the right path. You found the one, or you found the right person anyway. And that's a great thing. And I think hold on to that. If you're glowing up in a relationship, hold on to him or her, because that's good.
Yes, I love that. And so you got to be glowing up first to attract that too. We're glowing as it is, but we attract both. So we get the opposite. The darkness is like, ooh, I see lights. I want more of that. And then we also get the good one that's like, ooh, lights. Real recognizes real. Like the light attracts the light. So you do get both. And that's why I think really just taking our time. I think another important thing is intuition, because I think our gut kind of warns us, right? So we might meet someone that looks good on the surface or on paper and all of that stuff. And he might be saying all the right things and we might have a good time at dinner or dates and stuff like that. But if something in your intuition feels, I don't know, something's off about this person, trust that. Because when you are with the right person, like you said, not only do they energize you, but you won't get a bad feeling. You'll get a good feeling. You'll just get a good feeling like, oh, this just feels right. We do get, our body knows when
Yeah.
something, you know what I mean? Your body is electric. So
Yes.
energetically, it can feel when something is good for us. There's this boost of energy where we're like, this feels good. You feel safe and you feel expansive. And then there's those other people that even if they're saying all the right thing, there's something about it that may feel restricting and you don't know why. And you may doubt yourself because there's no proof, but all the proof you need is in your gut. Your body knows. You know what I mean? It really does.
100%. I remember I was on a date with this guy and he was an absolute gentleman,
Mm.
next level kind, next level lovely. But I just wasn't attracted to him for some reason. And over time, I realized why. But one of the early indicators that it wasn't going to work out was I remember we were sitting at the movies and he
Uh-huh.
rested his arm on my arm. And my first immediate reaction was pull away. And that
Right,
was
right.
when I realized, what was that?
Mhm.
Normally, if I'm super attracted to a guy, maybe we're in the movies and I'm thinking, I want to sneak my hand closer to his, or I want to feel the warmth of his energy and I want to feel his touch. But in that instant, my first reaction was almost I touched a hot surface. And
Mm.
that was when I realized that there was something not aligned. And so, yes, I totally agree and believe that our bodies are very wise and they tell us what we want before we even consciously know what's going on. I have so much more to ask, but I'm conscious of time. So before we wrap things up, I would love to know, in terms of your book, who is it for? And what is one takeaway that you want people to have from reading the book?
Oh, I love that. The book is definitely for women. I would feel like it's for women of all ages. And the reason why I say all ages is because if it's for the younger women in their 20s and 30s, it's sort of like, don't make these same mistakes, right? Even though they're going to make their own mistakes because that's how we learn. But it's something so women know not to rush and stuff and enjoy the relationships. Definitely have an open heart. Don't be afraid. Like, there's nothing in here that says, like, be afraid of dating, but just be cautious and mindful and don't rush into commitments. Don't feel you need to get married and have kids. Make sure it's the right one and know that everyone comes into your life for a reason and just enjoy it, right? So that's for younger people who may read it. And then for older women who might read it, I think it's also good for women who may be in their 50s or 60s who may pick it up and read it. And they may look at their life, maybe they got married and divorced, maybe they are happily married, maybe they're single and they never got married. But it's good to read it even as an older woman, say, yeah, I went through stuff too when I was younger. And a man is not going to give you your value, right? Whether you get married or not. Your value is your value because you're breathing, you're alive, and you're a beautiful divine extension of source energy. You came in physical form, you happen to be a female. A man, an engagement ring is not going to tell you your worth, right? Yeah, we want the companionship, of course. We do. But whether or not we get it by a certain time, it's not going to determine your value as a woman. And your value really is how happy you are, is what you make life. So, yeah, I would say it's for all women. What I think people should take away from it, I don't know why this came to me for some reason, but I got the word travel.
Oh, I love
I got the
that.
word travel because I went to Tulum, Mexico by myself solo. And I don't suggest women traveling all around the world by themselves because things can happen. I do talk about sex trafficking in the book a little bit. I touch upon that. But I did go by myself to Tulum, Mexico, and it was just a beautiful experience as a woman. And I expressed that in the book that when you're single, you can do things like that. When you're married, it's not that you can't, but you're a team. So you do have to ask your husband. Your husband has to ask you. You have to talk about it like, hey, would you mind if I take a trip somewhere for a couple of days with the girls or this and that? It's a team. You can't just get up and do whatever you want. But when you're single, you can get up and do whatever you want. You have no one to
Yes.
answer to. So if you want to go to Thailand or
Yeah.
Mexico or Spain or Africa, you can do whatever you want. And I think that is so important for a woman to travel, to expand her horizons and to do things that set her heart on fire. So if you want to travel and you want to see a different world and a different perspective, don't wait for a man to take you on a honeymoon. Give yourself the honeymoon. Go on that honeymoon. Take yourself on a trip.
And if you're in a relationship, I've spoken to someone that's been on this show that has said, if you love solo travel and you're in a relationship, you should be able to do that too. You should
Right.
still do that too. And I know, like, one of the things that I said to my partner previously was, are you joining me or not? If you're not, I'm off. I'm going. I'm heading to Malaysia and Singapore and Bangkok. And if you can't make it, then I'll see you when I get back. And one of the things that I think we need to be able to do is create that freedom for ourselves and continue to have our own identities, even in relationships. Our partner shouldn't be our everything. We should be able to have our own lives and remember what brought us joy before we got into relationships, because otherwise it's very easy for that relationship to go stale, for things to get really just not a happy, fulfilling
Routine,
thing.
boring.
Yeah, routine, boring. And it's good to come back and miss your partner and message each other when you're overseas and be like, today I saw this and I experienced that and I can't wait to see you, babe. And all of that stuff. It adds excitement and value to your relationship too.
Yes, totally agree. I totally agree. Yeah. So that's what I would say. So I am proud of the book. The cover is beautiful. And the girl who did the cover, I believe she lives in Great Britain. She's in Europe. And then I had someone else who did the interior page layout. And I'll show you what he did here. For example, every chapter begins with flowers there. See that?
Oh, stunning. I'm definitely going to get my hands on this book. I'm wondering if this would resonate with men as well, if there's stuff in there that men will get value out of as well.
I think so, because I have some guy friends who read it.
Yeah, because I
They read
think
it to
that,
support me. They were like, they kept reading. I'm like, you like it? And they're like, yeah, like they couldn't put it down. I was like, oh, that's such a good sign. I'm like, okay.
yeah, I think that there are a lot of men that listen to podcasts or read books that are designed for women, and they get a lot of stuff out of it too, because there's stuff that men don't get to talk about amongst men, but
Mhm.
they actually really vibe with it. So I say
Yeah.
anyone that is still listening to this episode, you would probably resonate with this book, and I'd highly recommend getting your hands on it. I'm going to link to it in the show notes. And for anyone that wants to learn more, definitely reach out to Jasmine on social media. She's all over social media. She's on Instagram as well. And Jasmine, I'm sure that there is going to be so much more that you're going to be gifting the world through your socials, through the work that you are doing. And I'm just super grateful to have had you on the show. And I thank you so much for your time and your lovely energy.
Oh, thank you. I really am very grateful to have been on this show as well.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. And to all the listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. It's been wonderful having you tune into these episodes. We continue to record these every single week. So stay tuned for more updates and more episodes on how to stay inspired to thrive and shine. And for now, thank you so much. So thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you inspired to thrive.